Hi, welcome to the 2021 Children's Sequoyah Reading Masterlist presentation. My name is Emily Masters. My pronouns are she, her. I am the current secretary and chair-elect of the Children's Sequoyah Reading Committee. I am an elementary librarian in Putnam City at Overholser Elementary. The current chair of the committee is Shauna Busby. Let's go ahead and get started with the 2021 Master List. All right, here's the 2021 Children's Sequoyah Master List. Up first is Let It Out Loud by Angela Cervantes. Kids will love this book. Girls will love this book. Boys will love this book. Non-binary kids will love this book. It's truly for everybody. Letty is learning English. She's a little frustrated because her little brother is a lot faster at it than she is, and it comes more naturally to him because he's younger. She likes to think about what she's going to say, which is why she prefers writing to always speaking English necessarily. So she volunteers at an animal shelter, and she's going to write the bios for all of the animals to help them get adopted. She and a boy who's not always very nice to her kind of get into a contest to see who can get the most animals adopted. This book is fantastic because it really talks about the struggles of an English language learner, as well as why sometimes kids are meaner than they normally would be if there weren't extenuating circumstances. Letty is at the store in one scene with her friend and her friend's mother, and her friend and her friend's mother are speaking Spanish to each other at the store, and a horrible man comes up to them and tells them to go back to their country. And it's a very accessible way for kids to kind of talk about that sort of racism that they experience in the everyday, and makes it more accessible to white kids who may not always have to experience things like that, and gives a voice to those Latinx kids who do have to experience things like that. Some read-alikes for this book are Each Tiny Spark and The Moon Within. I highly recommend The Moon Within. It's a book in poetry, and it is fantastic. It is about a girl and her moon ceremony where she gets her first period, and she has a friend who's non-binary, and it's just truly, truly wonderful, but a little old for the Sequoyah list. But I really like it. Okay, up next is One Third Nerd by Jennifer Choldenko. This book is about a young boy. He has two little sisters, and they and their mother live in an apartment, and their landlord is so mean. He keeps trying to kick them out for like totally unnecessary things, but they do have a dog that pees everywhere. So they're trying to figure out a way to train their dog in order to get her to stop peeing all over their apartment so their landlord will stop being so mean to them. One of his little sisters is, I don't want to say evil mastermind, but she definitely has a lot of inventions that don't always go the way that she plans for them to go. There is a scene where she is trying to invent something and it ends up exploding, and the police get called, and it's just a whole mess, but they get it all figured out. He also has a little sister who has Down syndrome. So this book is a really fun way to talk about the struggles of eviction, of neurological differences and disabilities, as well as having to deal with divorced parents. It's also really funny. Some read-alikes for this one are Pie in the Sky, which, again, love this book. It's kind of a mix of a graphic novel and a novel, and it's about Asian American immigrants, and it's fantastic. And then I'm sure you're all familiar with Because of Winn-Dixie. The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise by Dan Gemeinhart. Pardon me. So, The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise is, I mean, if you want to cry because you're so happy, because the book is so good, like, this is the book that you need to read. Coyote and her dad live in a school bus, and they travel all over the country because her mother and sister died in a very tragic car accident, and her father just cannot handle being anywhere that they live together and were happy together. So they're just always on the move, and Coyote is kind of getting tired of that. She finds out that the park by their old house is being demolished, and what her father doesn't know is that she and her mother and sister buried a time capsule there right before the accident. So she has to trick her dad into driving all the way across the whole country to go get this time capsule. On the way there, they manage to pick up a young boy and his mother who are on their way to a new life. They pick up a teenage girl who is trying to move across the country. And when I say shenanigans ensue, I mean at one point they have to transport a goat and she has to drive the school bus. So this book is full of hijinks, shenanigans, super emotional, really, really great read. And I think it's probably clear that I enjoyed this book, so I'm going to move on to the read-alikes. We've got Love, Aubrey, Because of Mr. Interrupt, and One for the Murphys. Next is Song for a Whale by Lynn Kelly. I know I keep saying all these books are fantastic, but they're all fantastic. I'm so happy about this list this year. So Song for a Whale is about a girl who is deaf. Her parents and brother are hearing, but her grandparents are deaf as well. Her grandfather died, and she's feeling really alone because she had a very special connection with her grandfather, and she goes to an all-hearing school, and so she kind of feels like a fish out of water, if you will. She finds out about a whale that sings at a different frequency from all other whales, and so it swims alone because the other whales can't hear him to find him, and this totally resonates with her, and she decides to go on this quest to find this whale. She and her STEM teacher at school create, using software, a song that the whale can hear, and so she goes on the coolest adventure ever with her grandma trying to find this whale. It's awesome. Lynn Kelly's actually a sign language interpreter as her full-time job, so this book is really balanced and shows a lot of positive insight into the deaf community. And she actually, I was able to sit in on an interview with her, had some deaf students read this book and kind of give her feedback on what that experience is like. So it's a super inclusive, fantastic book. And just in case you're wondering, the sign for deaf looks like this, and the sign for hearing looks like this. So that's a really fun way to introduce this book to your students. Some read-alikes for this book are Hello Universe and El Defo. Next up is Because of the Rabbit by Cynthia Lord. So this book is going to be awesome for your third graders. It's really short, easy to get through. It is about a girl who is transitioning into public school after being homeschooled until the 5th grade. And her dad is a wildlife ranger, and they find a bunny in the woods, and it's not a woods bunny, it's a pet bunny. And she really wants to keep the pet bunny, but her dad says they have to try and find who the bunny belongs to. So she moves into public school, and she really wants to fit in and make friends. And she ends up making friends with somebody in her class that she doesn't really understand why everybody in the class is so mean to him, because he seems awesome to her. And it's never explicitly stated that this student is autistic, but he's definitely written as being neurodivergent or neuroatypical, depending on which phrase you prefer. And he is fantastic and really gives her an insight into what kind of person she wants to be and what being a true friend is all about. Some read-alikes for this book are All's Fair in Middle School and The World According to Humphrey. Mina Meets Her Match by Carla Manternack. This book is, again, fantastic for your third graders. Short, quick, fun. Mina is obsessed with bright colors and glitter, and she loves to collect trash from the playground and make beautiful art with it. She's so fun and really readable. I love her, sorry. But she kind of gets in trouble at school a lot because she often spaces out and doesn't pay attention, or something happens to her. And as it turns out, she has a medical condition that's giving her mini seizures. And so she has to kind of struggle with what that means for her and her future. And she's also dealing with her best friend kind of pulling away from her. So it's a really good way to talk about how kids have real problems and they have real feelings that they have to deal with. And it's very, I think, validating for some of the students to realize that yes, the problems and emotions and feelings that they have are just as big and real as important as their grown-up teachers and parents and friends. So I absolutely love this book. The sequel actually just came out, and I believe that there is a third one coming out, though I'm not 100% sure on that. Some read-alikes for this one are Roller Girl, The Beckett List, and Junie B. Jones. Rescuing Rialto, A Baby Sea Otter Story by Linda V. Mapes is one of our nonfiction books. This one is a smaller picture book size book. It is super cool. It's about finding a baby otter that needed to be rescued. And I love this because kids love animals. Let's be real. Kids love to read books about animals. They're so interested in science and things like that. And this book is so interesting because I think a lot of kids don't realize that being a person who takes care of baby otters is like a real job. That's a career that they could have. So this book kind of talks about the process of rescuing and caring for wild animals like otters. Some read-alikes are Koala Hospital, Pup 681, and Sea Bear. Saving Fable by Scott Rankin is next on the list. I am obsessed with this book. It's so good. So this book is so interesting. It is definitely a totally different look into like fairy tale and book writing lore and things like that. Basically, this book is about what happens to book characters before they get into the book. So the main character of this book kind of lives in a little village, and every day they wait for a signal that an author has written a book that they would be perfect for, or is writing a book that they would be perfect for. And she finally gets her call and gets to go to Protagonist Academy. And some crazy hijinky things happen. There's an evil magician, and they have to figure out how to save their whole entire world because somebody is trying to meld their world with the real world. This book is so fun to kind of introduce the world of literature to kids. One of her teachers is Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice. Another of her teachers is Alice from Alice in Wonderland. And it is just such an interesting and fun fantasy novel that your kids are absolutely going to eat up. Book 2 is about to come out, and I believe there will be a third in the trilogy as well. So a read-alike for this book is going to be The Hero's Guide to Saving Your Kingdom. Next up is the Oddmeyer Book 1, Changeling, by William Ritter. So this book, I'm a total sucker for fairy tales. This is definitely right up my alley, but the original story of the Changeling, of course, is that a goblin or a fairy switches out your baby for a goblin or a fairy baby, and you never know that it's not your baby anymore, etc. So the goblin comes, and he's switching out the baby, and he looks away for a second, and he looks back, and he can't remember which one is the baby and which one is the goblin. So he just leaves them both there. So imagine that you're a mom and you go to get some milk in the kitchen and you come back and all of a sudden you have 2 babies and you didn't previously have 2 babies. Hilarious. So these boys grow up, they're twins, they never know which one is the baby and which one is the goblin, but their mother loves them just the same until there's an evil dark force taking over the world and they have to figure out which one of them is the goblin because he has the magic that can stop the evil dark force. So some read-alikes for this book are Dark Lord Clementine, which I highly recommend, Archimancy, and Saving Fable, which of course is also on this list. Birdie by Eileen Spinelli is a book written in verse. It is a really nice introduction into kind of relationships and how awkward that can be for kids at this age. Her mom starts dating somebody, her grandma starts dating somebody, her best friend starts dating somebody, and Birdie is like, I just want to play Scrabble. Like, what's wrong with you guys? So this one is really fun, and it's a super quick and easy read. Some read-alikes for this one are like Pickled Juice on a Cookie and Umbrella Summer. Okay, next up is Roll With It by Jamie Sumner. Guess what, guys? This book takes place in Oklahoma! So the main character of this book has a muscle degenerative disease, and so she's in a wheelchair, and she and her mom actually have to move in with Grandma, and Grandma's trailer at Lake Eufaula is not super wheelchair accessible. So she kind of has to deal with people not really knowing how to act around her, but all she wants to do is win the pie baking contest and make friends in this new city. So this one is really fun, and the author of this book actually has a child with the same disability as the main character, so it's a really insightful look into how that looks growing up. Some read-alikes for this book are Superstar by Mandy Davis, which was on the list, I believe, 2 years ago, Counting by Sevens, and Out of My Mind. A Monster Like Me by Wendy S. Swore is a truly fantastic book. This girl is born with a blood tumor on her face, which is why she wears her hair covering that part of her face. People often look at her and she genuinely believes that she's a monster and that if she can gather the right talismans, something will happen to fix her and people will love her again. And so it's kind of a mix of like realism and magic and adventure and finding out like what's really important. So some read-alikes for this book are Wonder, Fish in a Tree, and Restart. All right, next up is The Light Jar by Lisa Thompson, and I have to say this one is my favorite. I know I keep saying that, but they're all so good, but this one is my most favorite. So The Light Jar by Lisa Thompson is super interesting because it features abuse at the hands of a kind of a family member. A young boy and his mother are escaping his mother's abusive boyfriend. What I find so interesting and truly accessible for young readers about this book is that it is emotional and manipulative abuse. It is not physical abuse. So this young boy is completely terrified of the dark because his mother's boyfriend does not allow them to use light in the house. He is the only person that is allowed to use light or have access to light bulbs. So he has really kind of trained and manipulated them into being afraid of things that should not be scary. So they go out to the English countryside and kind of live in, they find a cottage that his mother has had access to previously. And she's like, I'm going to go get supplies. She goes, she never comes back. It's starting to snow. He's getting scared and he wanders around and he finds a young girl who's like, I want to go on a treasure hunt. And this book is really interesting because it not only combines like the fear of living in an abusive household and not knowing where your mom is and being alone with lore about imaginary friends, their origins, and what happens to an imaginary friend after their child dies or unexpectedly does not need them anymore. This book has so many layers. It is really exciting, and I think it would be a truly edge-of-your-seat read aloud for 4th and 5th graders. So read-alikes for this book are going to be Crenshaw and Small as an Elephant. Stargazing by Jen Wang is a graphic novel! Woo! Your kids are going to be so excited. This book is so fun. It is beautiful. The illustrations are fantastic, and it is a truly wonderful story about 2 young girls who are friends, and one of them is kind of weird. She believes that the stars speak to her and she sees beautiful, creatures coming from the skies and things like that, and everybody at school is like, okay. But she kind of collapses at a party, and as it turns out, spoiler alert, she has a brain tumor. So this book is kind of about deciding how to stand up for yourself and people that you know to be your friends and know to be good people, what to do when something just truly devastating that you would never expect to happen happens. And it is absolutely fantastic. So read-alikes for this book are going to be Smile, Best Friends, and Dirt. The last book on the list this year is also a nonfiction picture book. It is called A Green Place to Be by Ashley Benham Yazdani. It is about the creation of Central Park. So this book has absolutely gorgeous illustrations, and it is about the creation of Central Park, the contest, and just kind of what that whole process is about. So some read-alikes include Manhattan, mapping the story of an island, which is incidentally also kind of about the same thing. Manhattan goes into a little bit more depth regarding the indigenous people and Black Americans that were kind of forced out of their lands in order to make room for Central Park. So it might be better for 4th and 5th graders rather than 3rd, 4th, and 5th. But again, beautiful illustrations, kind of the same story. And then Up in the Leaves, the true story of the Central Park tree houses. Now this is always my favorite part of Sequoyah presentation, the not quite list. So these are books that we absolutely loved, but for one reason or another did not quite make the list. So excuse me if I wax on a little bit about some of these. I had a lot that were on this list because I love children's books. What can I say? So first up, we have Count Me In by Varja Bajaj. And this book is fantastic. It is about a girl who experiences some hate crimes about the fact that she is brown and Muslim, and she, doesn't really know how to deal with that until she does. And it's really great. It reminds me a lot of Wish Tree by Katherine Applegate. Infinite Hope, A Black Artist's Journey from World War II to Peace by Ashley Bryan is an autobiographical, I don't even know, it's not a picture book, it's not a book, it's a book, it's a memoir, it's an autobiography. It has sketches from his journal, it has actual pages from his journal, it has photographs of his art. This book is, it's so fantastic. We got it really late in the judging season, and so we did not manage to have enough readers to get this on the list, but it is, please get this book for your library. It is so important to be telling these Black stories right now, and I loved this book. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Oh Captain, My Captain is an absolutely gorgeous picture book about Walt Whitman, Abraham Lincoln, and the Civil War. And When Sue Found Sue, Sue Hendrickson Discovers Her T-Rex by Tony Bazzeo is a really fun picture book about the discovery of the T-Rex that we all know and love as Sue. Captain Rosalie is so good too. So I told you, I love all these books. It's fantastic. We don't get a lot of children's literature about World War I. We get a lot of children's literature about World War II. So this one is interesting and kind of different because it will definitely appeal to those readers that you have that are like obsessed with World War II, but it is about World War I and a young girl's fear and search and hope for her father who is away in the war. It was translated from French. And it has absolutely stunning illustrations. It's a really short, easy read, but it does kind of require a lot of brain power to really understand the depth of what's happening in this book. Far Away is a book about a girl who is on the road with her clairvoyant aunt, who always just tells her that her mother is in the far away. But as it turns out, her mother just really wasn't ready to be a mother. So this book it's totally action-packed. It's really about, standing up for yourself and choosing your own family and doing what's right for you, even if it doesn't feel like what's right for everybody. The Beckett List is this book is perfect for third grade girls. It is about a young girl and just her life on her farm and with her family. And she's like a step up from Junie B. Jones, but definitely in that same vein of like quirky, fun girl. A Place to Belong is devastating, heartbreaking, fantastic, wonderful, truly incredible. Like I said, we get a lot of stories about World War II, but we don't often get stories about Japanese Americans in World War II. So this book is about a young girl who her brother, and her parents are basically deported and they have to go to Japan. She and her brother were born in America, but her parents were not. And so they end up going to live on her grandparents' farm. And she really experiences like what real poverty is like. And she passes through Hiroshima and sees the devastation. And this book, I'm not going to cry about it, but it's really good. And I definitely recommend it for more mature 4th and 5th graders, but it's a fantastic learning experience as well as beautifully written novel. Over the Moon is a fun fantasy book where this town is like, everything is dirty and covered in dust and people are sad, and as it turns out, this huge cloud of dust that like covers their town is actually preventing them from being able to see the moon and the light and the joy in the world. And this girl whose arm ends at her elbow, she decides to join a troop of kids who are given like winged horses that they have to fly out and collect this really special magic dust off of mountaintops and come back, and then they have to like overthrow the evil lord who's keeping all other people in servitude, etc. So this definitely for those kids that just eat up all fantasy and adventure books, this is going to be a good one for them. Batting Order is... I actually handed this book to a 4th grader of mine who has been refusing to read anything but like piggy and elephant books, and he was like, do you have any more books by this guy? And then he read all of Mike Lupica's books. So this is definitely a great starting point for those kids who love sports, who are kind of shy. It's about a young boy who plays baseball, but he also has a pretty severe stutter. And so he kind of struggles with like being his best self on and off the field because he doesn't have a stutter on the field until he's kind of driven into a more emotional state by a bully. Oh, hurricane season. Oh, hurricane season. Oh, hurricane season. So obviously the cover is just stunning. Look at it with your eyes. Wow. So hurricane season is about a girl whose father is obsessed with hurricanes. And anytime there are hurricanes, she kind of has to make sure that he's okay. And she's doing a little more than she should have to do as a young girl. So this book is fantastic. It talks about a lot of big issues like bipolar disorder. It talks about LGBT issues. Her father, he was married and had a child, but he also falls in love with a man, and that's okay, except for that he lied about it, So it's the issue with her father falling in love with a man is not that it's a man, it's that he wasn't open and honest with her. But she also has a crush on a girl at school and doesn't really know how to approach that topic. So this is a really great way to kind of talk about how nobody is really 100% ready to talk about things that they aren't ready to talk about. So it's a good way to introduce those kinds of concepts to your younger readers. We're Not From Here is a really fun alien comedy, hijink, crazy adventure. Amber, who's on the committee, will absolutely kill me if I don't tell you guys to go get the audiobook for this. It did win an award because they go to, this other planet because Earth is dying and everybody has to wear a translator box like the dogs in Up. But the voices don't always match like the character, so it's pretty funny. And they have to kind of figure out how to coexist with a species completely different than themselves. Oh, Rats is a book about a squirrel who ends up living with a rat colony, and they actually cause a blackout in New York City because they're really mad that New York City is trying to tear down the dock where these dock rats live. And it is so funny. These characters are completely endearing, and I'm sorry. I keep saying I love these books. I love these books. What can I do? The Griffins of Castle Carey is so good. It is really scary. I'm not used to being kind of severely spooked by children's books, but here you go. So these kids are in England visiting their aunt, and the grown-ups are always trying to scare kids with the stories of the ghosts, etc. But the ghosts are real, and there's a young ghost that's trying to steal their little sister for a playmate. And the ending culmination, it's the last 20 pages of the book, you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. It's like that. It's super great. So I love this book because the main characters, these kids, are biracial, and I think it's really important that we have more characters of color and children of color on our shelves. The author of this book is white, so it is not an Own Voices book, but it is a fantastic book that I really recommend, and I think that we should all be looking at our shelves to make sure they're truly representative of our, our populations and the communities that we serve. Stone River Crossing is by Tim Tingle. It's actually an extension of a picture book that he wrote. And this book, I don't even know how to explain what genre this book is, honestly. It's historical fiction that turns into magical realism, that turns into crazy epic fantasy adventure, and it is fantastic. It is about a Native American tribe that helps an enslaved family escape from slavery. I will just, a heads up, Tim Tingle has recently been accused of sexual harassment and assault, so just beware of that if you do decide to do an author study or anything like that with your kids, that may come up in your searches. All right, last up is Curse of the Were-Penguin, which, again, it's so good. We don't get a lot of, we get a lot of really heavy kids literature, and we have morals, and we talk about those things and heavy issues, and yes, all of that is important, but so is laughing. And Curse of the Were-Penguin is Young Frankenstein meets film noir satire meets were-penguins ? And it is absolutely hysterical. I highly recommend this book. I can't say anything else that describes it better than Young Frankenstein for kids. So that is our 2021 Children's Sequoyah Master List and our Not Quite list. And if you'll stick around just a little bit longer, I have a couple more things to tell you about. All right, so that was the 2021 list. Now, if you have ever looked at our Sequoyah lists and you're like, wow, I wish I got to read all of these super cool books before everybody else, guess what? You can! So applications are open to be on the committee. They open on July 27th. You can find them at oklibs.org on the Sequoyah page. I highly recommend you apply and try and get on this committee. It is absolutely the most rewarding professional development I have ever had. I can't express how important it is to connect with librarians from all over the state who serve different kinds of communities than your own. You get to read, I read 165 books for this committee last year. So it is definitely a time commitment. There are monthly meetings. There are lots of books to read, but guess what? You get to keep all those books and you get to read them and talk with your kids about them. It is so exciting and refreshing to be able to direct kids to books that I have read and I know why they're gonna like it. I can tell them all about it. So it's really exciting. I truly hope that you apply to get on this committee. I would love to see your name on that list. So get yourself applied on this. I hope you guys have an awesome virtual conference, and I can't wait to see you at OTA, probably, hopefully. Okay, bye.